This is Wendy's rock. It's a nice cloudy quartz crystal. And usually when I choose a rock, I will run my hands over the pile of rocks that I'm wanting to pick and feel a vibration from it. And this is the one that popped up for Wendy, and I'd like to share her story with you now.
This is a mystic story for Wendy. And Wendy chose the number 9, the color of the clear ocean water. She wants to bring love into her life, and she wants to release fear of the past or past fears. So give me a moment. Once upon a time, there was a very young girl who was standing on the seashore. She was looking out into the beautiful, beautiful blue ocean. The ocean was very, very special to her. She came here every chance she got. And she walked up and down the beach, and she looked for things. She looked for pebbles, she looked for shells, she looked for pieces of kelp that she could pop. She had so much fun at the beach. But she also had some painful memories about the beach. So anytime the waves got a little bit too big, Sharon was her name, would back up to way back behind the high water mark. And she would watch from that perspective, but she really didn't like it way back there. That wasn't the fun part. The fun part was when you could run down and put your toes in the water and wiggle them in the wet sand and run up and down the beach looking for treasure. She always thought about the treasures she would find, and she just loved being there. One day, Sharon went down to the beach, and she saw in the far, far distance, she saw something very, very unusual, and she didn't really know what it was. And so she ran home. Her house was right along the seashore. She ran home to ask her daddy to come look. And her father wasn't busy, and he came out with Sharon, and he looked out at the horizon, far, far away. They saw something out there, but he couldn't tell what it was either. And Sharon just stood there mesmerized, watching this shadowy form on the horizon. And her father said, "Sharon, I'm going to go back in the house, but if that thing gets any closer and you think I might be able to tell what it is, you come get me again and I'll come right out here. I'll come running. In fact, if you can come up at close enough to the house, all you have to do is call for me. Call me, Daddy, come here, and I'll come." And she knew she could do that because her father loved her very, very much. So she sat in the sand. She sat in the sand, and she had her little pail and shovel, and she started to dig and build sand castles. And she got so busy, she forgot to look out at sea to see what that was. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And she didn't realize it. She'd forgotten all about it. In fact, she dug this beautiful moat around her castle and was playing so hard and putting all the little pieces of stone and shell in as decoration, and she had her back to the water. And this thing that was coming in was a big, huge wave. It was one of those 1 in 100 waves. It wasn't a tsunami. It was a lot smaller than that, but it was pretty big. And it kept rolling in towards Sharon. Now, Sharon was just up at the edge of the high water mark. And she thought she was safe because the tide was out. She knew about these things even at her young age of 6. She knew that the water went out and it came back in again. And so she liked to play just on that edge that was still a little damp from the high tide. But now the water was going out again, so she didn't think she had to worry about the waves at all. Finally, though, she heard something. She heard something crashing. And she never heard a wave that big or that loud. And she turned around and she tried to call for her daddy, but her mouth just opened and she just froze as she watched that huge, gigantic wave break. And she could see the sun through the very clear ocean blue of the wave up at the top, and she just was mesmerized by the beauty and the terror of that number 100 wave, that 1 in 100 wave. And she stood there. She couldn't move. And the wave crashed in and came way up to beyond where she was and dragged her out. She couldn't do anything about it. She was pulled under with the undertow of the wave. Fortunately, she knew how to swim very well. Her daddy had taught her. And she held her breath really, really tight and prayed really, really hard. Oh, Daddy, 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 hear me now. I know, I'm yelling for you. Hear me, hear me. And she just screamed in her head, Daddy, 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 come get me, come save me. She cried that 9 times, yelling and screaming in her head until her lungs were just about ready to burst. And finally she popped up to the surface and she really did scream for her daddy. And she screamed 9 more times out loud. And her father heard her. And he came rushing out. He jumped in the water with all of his clothes on and swam out to his little girl and brought her back in safely. But you know what, Sharon, from then on, wasn't very pleased to be that close to the ocean anymore. She had a fear that stayed with her the rest of her life. She'd look at the ocean in picture books and remember how much she loved it. And she actually wanted to be with other people who loved the ocean. So she gathered people around her, people that went out sailing on the ocean, people that swam in the ocean, people that did all kinds of things, took voyages and trips in the ocean. But Sharon would never go join them. She just loved hearing their stories about the ocean. But she had this recurring nightmare all the time of a big, huge, gigantic wave swallowing her up and taking her out so that she thought she wouldn't ever breathe again. She really didn't know what to do. When Sharon was in her mid-20s, she decided that she was going to do something about this fear. She was going to get rid of it once and for all. She didn't know how to do it. And so she went up on the high bluff next to the sea and sat there. And it was almost like she was talking to the ocean. It was almost like she was beckoning it to come and fill her with that love and that joy that she had once had. She said, I have all these friends that love to be out on you. And she was talking to the sea. And as she talked to the sea, she could feel things inside. She could feel herself being taken out to sea in a gentle way. She could feel the surrounding of that beautiful, beautiful, clear blue that she saw the sun through just before she was swallowed up by the wave. And she decided to think of that instead of being taken out into the undertow. She decided to replace that beautiful, clear blue ocean wave with her fear of that. And she meditated and she thought. She went back every day. She went back every day for 9 months and did the same thing. The very same thing. And as she kept doing it, she started to have a love for the ocean that she had never had before. She wanted to be out there with her friends. And it wasn't long before she did. She started going sailing with them. She started going in people's yachts. She started swimming with her friends in the ocean. And it wasn't long before she realized how long it had been since she was afraid of the ocean. And she started to celebrate that she now had a new love for the sea. And she decided to commemorate it. And she went to school. She went to school and learned how to sail herself. She advertised in the paper and got a bunch of other women that wanted to go with her. They pooled their money. They bought a beautiful, big 65-foot sailboat and fitted it up with everything they would need. And they sailed the sea. They went to the Bahamas. They went to Puerto Rico. They sailed all around the eastern coast. And then they took it through the Panama Canal. And they came up the western side of the United States. And then they took it clear across the ocean. So much did they love the sea. After 9 years of traveling on the sea, Sharon finally felt that she could return home. And she and her friends did. Thank you. And may my words bring you blessings. Blessings that give you eyes to see the prince or princess in the bulgy-eyed frog. The blessings of ears that hear the cleansing of a mountain stream in your own tears. The blessing of hands that give the magic healing of touch. And the blessing of a voice that sings even in the rain. Thank you.